Hello, Herlaters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. Before we kick off the episode, just wanted to share some exciting news. I'm taking Herlights on the road for a 5-city tour: Seattle, Portland, Chicago, Minneapolis, and New York City. I'll be doing stand up at the start of the show, then bringing up some local women's sports celebrities. We're also partnering with a local women's sports bars for the after parties. It is going to be so much fun. The first show is in Seattle at Rough and Tumble Pub on Saturday, October 5th. All the information is on herlights.com, so head over there and check it all out. Okay, let's get into it. My guest today is Lesley Feldman. She won a national championship for softball at UCLA. Then, after graduating, she became a lawyer and started her own firm. And then 3 years ago, she co founded the Players Collxctive, a management agency focusing on female athletes. They specialize in contract negotiations, athlete brand management, business strategy, and helping brands navigate the women's sports industry. It was just really interesting to talk to her about the business side of sports and how she's playing like this incredible role in helping the athletes make the money they need in order to stay on the field. I was so impressed by her passion to create these opportunities and to make sure the players actually have proper representation. She still works full time at her own law firm and also finds a way to run the Players Collxctive. We need to clone her. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. So let's jump right in. First of all, do I call you a sports agent? I know you're a lawyer within a sports agency, but when you introduce yourself, do you go Lesley Feldman, sports agent?
No, but I am. I got licensed as an agent and I'm licensed in states as an agent. So technically, when players introduce me, they say this is my agent. So I'm a lawyer, but I am an agent as well. So I was that child who was like, I'm going to be a sports agent when I grow up. That's what I'm going to do. And if you knew me in college when I was playing at UCLA, I was like, I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to be a sports agent. So I did. I went to law school, and while I was in law school, I was still friends with a bunch of football players from UCLA, and I kept in touch with them. And it just happened to be that year that the Super Bowl was in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long time ago, obviously, because I've been a lawyer for 20 some odd years now. But I reached out to a football player who was playing for the Tampa Bay Bucks at the time, and I was like, hey, are you going to be at the Super Bowl? Is your agent going to be there? Can you introduce me? And he's like, yeah, they're having a party. Come with me. So I did. And he introduced me to his agent and his agency. And I basically was like, I want to work here. Can I intern? What can I do? And they hired me. So when I got my last year of law school and then out of law school, I worked for Athletes First, which is one of the biggest NFL agencies in the country. And they still exist down in Newport Beach. And I worked there for a couple of years. While I was there, I worked on a lawsuit. So go back. It used to be called Steinberg, Morad, and Dunn, and it's Lee Steinberg, which a lot of people have heard that name. But Dave Dunn left, and a bunch of NFL players followed him. So Steinberg sued him for taking players, for trade secrets, for like a multitude of reasons. And I worked on that lawsuit for a couple of years. And initially they lost. So they lost and there were huge legal fees and all that kind of stuff. And they were like, they put a freeze on the hiring and everything that was going on there. So they were like, we really want you to stay. But the only position that was really available for me was to be the receptionist. And to be honest, in hindsight, like then I should have just done it because they've appealed it and they won. And they're seriously one of the biggest NFL agencies in the world. And I might like kick myself that I was like, well, I had just taken the bar exam and I needed a job and I needed money, that I was like, I can't stay here and just work the front desk. But I probably could have grown had I stayed, hindsight. So I
Yeah, but
moved back.
how do you go from working on the
It,
lawsuit to receptionist?
well, I mean, I'm sure they would have had me do other things. It was just salary
Yeah.
wise, salary
Yeah.
wise, because of the lawsuit, they put a freeze on hiring. So they couldn't hire anyone and they couldn't increase anyone's salaries until the legal fees and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
was
It just
resolved.
seems like that's
So
a tough one, because then the argument, I love that I'm just arguing for you and I
thank
just met
you.
you, but the counter argument is that they always see you then as as a, a receptionist and blah, blah,
But you know
like
what?
who knows?
Yeah. But you know what's interesting about agencies is like there's a guy that still works there that was the football equipment manager and he built his way up and he's a major agent for NFL players now.
Yeah,
So
I guess you
I
never
would
know.
say if you want to get into an agency, I mean, remember those days where you worked in like the mailroom and you worked your way up CAA and now they're like major agents? Like I was in that time in that era where you had to work your butt off to become an agent. And I probably, should have and could have. It just was more like I'm getting, my law school loans were coming and I had to do
Yeah.
something. So I moved back to LA because I had gone to law school in San Diego because by the way, I won a national championship and didn't get into UCLA law school. So I had to like figure out what I know, right? They didn't care that I played softball anymore. So I actually went to law school down in San Diego. So I was living down there. And then I finally moved back to LA and got a job at a big law firm, just kind of like was like, here we go. I'm going to make some good money, be at a big law firm. And they put me in the employment law department. And I knew nothing about it. I didn't go to law school being like, I'm going to be an employment attorney. But here I am 20 some odd years later with my own firm. And I represent the Gap, Banana Republic, Old Navy, and Athleta. And I have for like 15 years. So
Holy crap.
I know. So that's my day job. And it had been for 20 some odd years. And I was just living my life. And I'm known as the Gap girl. Like I'll wear a jean shirt and a skirt to court. You know that I work it uh until NIL passed. And when NIL passed, I was literally like, I've always wanted to be involved in sports and I haven't been. So I was just like, I want to help athletes. And it really just kind of started with like, hey, what's going on? To be honest, it really started the day everyone became a Barstool athlete. Like, do you remember that first day when NIL
Oh,
dropped
yeah.
and everyone's like, I'm a Barstool athlete? I literally like sat here and was like, all these athletes have no idea what they're doing. They
Yeah.
have no idea what Barstool is. They have no idea who owns Barstool, what he's associated with. As an athlete, you can't be involved with any organization that has to deal with gambling, and he has a gambling side of like Barstool. And I was just like, I remember calling Coach Inouye and I was like, hey, tell everybody to stop being a Barstool athlete. And she was like, why? And I was like, it's just tell them to stop. And all of a sudden I was getting text messages like, hey, Lesley, Coach I told me I shouldn't be a Barstool athlete, but I am. What do I do? And like 3 or 4. So it was really at that point, I was like, I have to help these athletes. And to be honest, being at the football agency, I was like, I have to help female athletes because men are fine. They have
They're going to land on their feet.
they have, they have the agents, they're getting
Yeah.
taken care of, they're totally fine, but nobody's really focused on female athletes unless you're like the Serenas of the world, but let alone softball. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
nobody's truly been there to help them with negotiations and deals and contracts. And to be honest, that's how it started.
Wow. That's really interesting. Yeah, I just assume like one of my questions is like, okay, you're working at your own law firm. What's the moment where you're like, screw this, I'm going to do Players Collective? So I had no idea this is happening at the same time, which is
No, I don't sleep.
doubly. And I literally was like, how do you get all of this done? But I love that, my partner always has this term talent stack, right? When like all your talents kind of come into one. And it seems like this is sort of like the perfect moment of, right, your national championship, champion UCLA softball, law, and now full circle, you're repping, you literally, your agency has every single softball player anyone could want to rep. I mean, I know it's all athletes, but I feel like you guys have cornered the market on the best of the best. It's so impressive.
Yeah, to be honest, it really started with like I wanted to help my Bruins. So it started kind of around Rachel Garcia and Bubba Nichols because it was right around the time of the Olympics. Um, and then a softball player had reached out and was like, hey, there's a gymnast at UCLA that needs some help. Like, would you talk to her? And I was like, yeah. And what I loved about her, and I still adore about her, is her name's Nora Flatley. She interviewed me and she interviewed me and a few other agencies to decide like what she wanted to do. And then she came back and said that she wanted to work with me. And she, at the start of the first year of NIL, was one of the highest paid UCLA NIL athletes, just as a female gymnast. And she's just killed it while she was in college. And so that's kind of how I spread in that regards, is just kind of who knew who. And then I remember Coach Tar had reached out and said that Sis Bates was getting opportunities and she needed help. So Sis came into my life, and it really was like people just started to hear what's so funny. And if you know my teammates in college, they were like, you were so far out of the softball world. Like you'd come to games and like I know girls on UCLA, but like I was not involved in the softball world. And now I'm back in the softball world and people know my name. People know Players Collxctive, and like they reach out and they ask for help and advice. So it's kind of crazy, the full circle moment that it's become.
Yeah. All right. Talk to us about the 2021 like NIL explosion. Did you obviously with the lawyer mind, like when people were, coming to you, was it specifically for, contract like negotiation? Like the NIL is so confusing to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it in theory, but could you dumb it down for us? Like when you're talking to an athlete, even present day, like what are the conversations about? I know I just asked you six questions. So
Yeah, I
let's
got
let's
you.
let's go to the first one of just when it first happened.
Yeah, okay, the lawyer in me had been reading about it, and I knew at some point it was coming, and it was supposed to drop like state by state, but then all of a sudden the NC2A was like, ready or not, here it comes, and we're just gonna let it happen. So when it happened, what was really interesting about it was my brain went to, okay, what are the rules? Because the rules differed between state to state. So depending on who I was talking to, I had to learn the rules of that state, the rules of that university. I had reached out to the compliance department at every university I was working with and asked for their rules. Usually they'd refer me to, they had a breakdown of their rules, or I had to go on that state specific and like read about all the state laws. Because what I used, and I still say it to athletes, like, you might see one athlete doing something at their school, but if they're in a different state, you might not be able to do that. So I really was trying to speak with every athletic department that I could and every compliance officer that I could. And everybody had kind of started building like an NIL department and talking to them, because also at specific universities, I had to fill out paperwork and I had to apply to be their agent and I had to be approved. And then I had to register as a sports agent in Florida, in Oklahoma, in California, and get approved before I could even represent the athlete. So there was a lot of steps. There was a lot going on at the beginning. But now, I mean, here we are, years later. Now I know all the compliance officers and I know all the rules and I know who to talk to. So it's kind of obviously gotten easier, just because I know the rules. And what's interesting with players now, I think what they don't realize is they'll look at Players Collxctive and they see what we've done and they're like, hey, I really want to work with you. Well, I like to say I'm good, but I'm not that good to just be able to pull deals out, for any athlete, no matter what your status is in college. Like you could be player of the year, nominated for player of the year, All-American. If you don't have a social media following and you're not active on social media, the two don't work together. So NIL is really about social media and the following and engagement and activity. And I like to say, kind of the player you are on the field. Now, look, there's the Livy Dunns of the world who have the social media following and the engagement, and they might not be a starter on the gymnastics team and they've made a name for themselves. Players Collxctive has really just stayed with like those top athletes who also have a social media following. And that's kind of where I've kept it right now, just because I want to help so many more. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Yeah, it I was looking at your roster and just kind of thinking about like just this kind of monster, heightened all now eyes and lights are on women's sports, in the last 6 months, it feels like, okay, now, now we're relevant and like how that has, helped your Players Collxctive. It seems like you could triple in roster size. I was just thinking every softball player would want to work with you guys immediately. I know there's other agencies and stuff, but is this, it feels like on the outside everything is booming. So could you kind of talk to us about, like, when was the year that the Players Collective kind of came together?
That literally July of 2021 when NIL kind of came into effect. Like it was really at that point, I obviously always had this idea of wanting to help athletes. And to be honest, at that time, it started with Jamie Loprice, who was running Alliance Fast Pitch, which is the biggest youth travel, well, one of the biggest youth travel ball organizations, and a girl named Chelsea Sweetos, who at the time was working at Nike. Chelsea was really good at like the marketing and sales pitch. And I was like, I'll do the legal. And Jamie was like, we'll do events and kind of camps and clinics and all that kind of stuff. So the three of us kind of combined were like, let's do this. Chelsea has since left because she got a job at Meta, which ended up being a conflict of interest because Meta had their own like NIL program that they were running. So she has since walked away. And then I brought on Sierra Romero to take her place, and Natasha Watley, who I'm sure you
One
know
of the
that.
greatest, the
Who
greatest of
doesn't
all
know
time.
Natasha
Yeah.
Watley? Yeah. And Tosh is so great. One, we've been friends forever. And two, like, one, Tosh, I brought over to Athletes First 20 some odd years ago when she was getting out of college because she was an Olympian and she needed an agent. So I brought her over to that agency, and she'll even tell you to today, like they didn't know what to do with her. So
Mm.
they were like, here we have this amazing athlete, this Olympian, but we don't know what to do with her because she was a female athlete and not an NFL player. So she was like, I wish I had Players Collective that like just focused on me and like made the efforts like all around me. So she's really great because she's been there firsthand,
Yeah.
and like she can speak to these athletes of like, it's hard work and you got to keep it up, and you have to stay the best that you can on the field. And now there's a social media aspect that she didn't even have to deal with, you know? Now it's like you can have these brand deals, but if you're not posting on social media and like tagging that brand deal, like why are they going to want to stay with you? So you have to do your part, like your job also on the social media side too.
It just seems like these athletes, have so they have so much to handle. It's and I think it's just, it is what it is, right? This is how it works now. But to not only be like the best you can possibly be on the field, and then schoolwork, which you just forget. When I'm watching, you know, all these games, especially the College World Series, and they're like, well, she had to, prep for her final before the game. And you just forget, like, I just forget as a fan that these are still college students. And now the pressure of the NIL and social media, like, have you seen like the
Oh,
pressure that these
yeah,
kids
I
are
mean,
under?
completely. I think what helps is me, the fact that I played.
Yeah.
So I think what helps is not only when I'm negotiating deals, I also have the mindset of being an athlete. So when I'm talking to brands, a lot of brands are reaching out right before the college, right before regionals or super regionals or the College World Series. And what's interesting is that these brands that are reaching out, I'm talking to people that are not athletes. So they're like, we sign a deal on a Monday and they're like, we need the content by Thursday. And I was like, well, Monday's her only off day and now it's Monday night. She's got practice Tuesday and then she leaves Wednesday. You know what I mean? And you want
Yeah.
her to go into, the local restaurant and do a camp. Like we just don't have time to do that. So it's explaining to them their time and kind of negotiating it all at the end. I think that's why athletes appreciate it, is like they don't have to deal with that. I am having that entire conversation. And I'm like, look, if they go to regionals, they'll be back on Sunday and she'll have Monday off and I can get it filmed on Monday. And they're like, okay. So I'm like, you got to push it. So I work with them around their schedules, that they don't have to deal with any of those conversations. I know their schedule. I usually am reaching out to them and been like, hey, so-and-so wants to work with you. It's this amount of money. I said, we'll shoot the content next week on your off day. And they're like, cool, let's do it. And then what I do is make sure any content that we have to post is already created, done before a super regionals, before like everything you saw at the World Series, we shot that way before. So they are not being bothered whatsoever, like while they're at the World Series, like that's all been shot before we even got there. All they have to do is post. But then again, being a former athlete, I have to explain to brands like, we're not going to post on a game day. We're not going to post if they lose. You know what I mean? We're going to post on an off day. I don't really know when their off days are because they might win and lose. You know what I mean? So you got to work with me here.
Yeah.
So there's like a business around it. And it's interesting because I don't think coaches realize they're like, I don't want NIL to mess with my team, with my playing. And I'm like, they don't realize the conversations I'm having being an athlete of like, they're not going to post on game days because I don't want a coach to think their head's not in the right space. They're not going to post after they lose because I don't want a coach to think you just got your butt kicked out there and now you're posting social media. So like, I'm negotiating all that kind of stuff before it even happens.
This seems exhausting.
I love it. I love
I mean,
it. I love it.
exciting, but
I
like,
love it. I wish I could do it full time. I really do because
yeah,
it started as this passion to
yeah,
help female athletes. And obviously, like you said, with the athletes that we have, it's become pretty much I'm gonna say a full-time thing because I work as like, if you saw my desk right now, I have like a huge screen that's all my legal work. And then now I'm on my laptop. So like I look one way for my legal work and then I flip to my laptop for Players Collxctive and I do it all day long. Or at the end of the day, like I'll shut down around 5 or 6 and then I take my laptop to the couch and I'm like responding to emails and invoices and all that kind of stuff. So I just I'm a crazy work person.
but is the goal for you personally to at some point do Players Collective full time?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely love to, but I am born, raised, and live in LA. So
Yeah.
until women get paid more, that I can get paid more because I don't take anything unless they've gotten paid. I still have to be a lawyer so I can survive in this crazy place that I call home.
Yeah. Well, LA is just one of the great to me, one of the greatest cities you could ever live in. But yeah, you have to it's $75 for coffee. We all get it. It's insane. You have to pay
Well,
for
and
the
I've spent
weather.
a lot of time in Norman. I know we don't want to talk about that, but I have. And
We
I'm like,
will.
wow, the
We
house
will.
I could get in Norman. I mean, I would
Yeah.
be living in Norman, but the house I
But
could
then you
get
live
there.
in Norman. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get to my love hatred for Oklahoma softball, but I'm just putting myself in your shoes. You want it like, the Players Collective, you want it to be full time. Certainly it feels like there is a need for it and a want for it. Talk to us about like, it seems like it's all headed in the right direction. Is this very slow progress for, also does it might depend on the sport, but like it's seemingly the most of your athletes are softball. Is it getting better for deals for, collegiate athletes and pro?
Yeah, well, we're talking softball space. So, it's getting better. It's going in the right direction, but it's not at the point where it's a complete livelihood for them or for me. And that's what I hope changes over time because we are moving in the right direction. We're just not there yet. But every year it's gotten better and better. So who knows where, the world is going to go in that capacity. So, like last year, obviously repping a bunch of girls on the OU softball team, like they killed it in the NIL space. So they can live a nice life right now for a little bit, with that kind of money. But it's also like, as a pro athlete, what's going to happen now? Because all eyes were on OU last year. But unfortunately, when you join the pro space, you're just another national champion. I mean, think about when you're
Yeah.
watching Athletes Unlimited, how many of those girls are national champions? How many of those girls are All Americans? So then you're back in the how do you stand out from the rest of them to get brand deals and bring brand deals in and stay at the level you have been from your college career?
Yeah, I was thinking, does this put more pressure? Like if we take, let's just take, one of the biggest NIL deals. We won't mention names, but, we'll just say, okay, does this put a lot of extra pressure on a collegiate, let's say you got like top 1, 2 collegiate athletes and they can get a huge, NIL deal, um, maybe transfer to another program that's less of a storied program, knowing, well, when I graduate, I mean, what is the starting salary for, athletes unlimited in the summer? 30, 40,000. I mean, it can't be, it's probably not even that much. So you think like the NIL is it's so mind-boggling to me. It's like now it just feels like there's a pay to play in the college level. Oh God, and especially as a female athlete, I got to take this money now, which is almost the opposite, obviously, how it should be.
But
Because when you hit pro, you're supposed to be
it's
making all the
gonna,
money.
I mean, look, the evolution of just kind of what's happening in college sports is changing every year.
Yeah.
Some might think for the good, some might think it's for the bad. Like I think it's out of control. So the ability, look, when you think about NIL, you say name, image, and likeness. And to be honest, and if you go back, the whole thing was, premised around the ability for brands to have to pay athletes, college athletes, for their use of their name, image, and likeness in like advertisements. So when I thought of NIL, I always like brand deals. It's what I've been doing all year. It's the Oakleys, it's the Raising Canes, it's the Adidas, like brand deals, brand partnerships. Well, of course, donors came in and were like, well, we have another idea. We're going to call it collectives. And so collectives are donor-run organizations that donors can fund and put money into in exchange for using an athlete's name, image, and likeness. And in doing that, they could have them out for a meet and greet. They can have them out for an autograph signing. They could have them sign balls. They could have them sign jerseys. And that's where the significant amount of money is coming from, especially in the softball space, more than brand deals. So what's crazy is if you look back at softball, like you have a Rachel Garcia that missed NIL completely. Okay. So she didn't get anything. Then you have a Tiare Jennings that just won 4 national championships, 4-time All-American, who killed it really her junior and senior year. And now you have a junior who transfers and is killing it in her. So it's evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like every year. And like the Rachel's upset that she didn't get the money, and the Tiare's going to be upset that she didn't get that level of money. You know what I mean? So it's always going to be, Tosh all the time is like, Les, how much money would I have made? I'm like, Tosh, don't ask. You don't want to know. You know
I
what I mean?
can't.
I,
Everybody, if you're listening, you don't know who Natasha Watley is, go look her up. Literally, like, gold Olympic medals, championships. I mean, I saw her because I'm such a geek. I saw her at I see her multiple UCLA softball games. You'll introduce me one day. And I
yes.
gasped like a
Oh
child.
my God.
I just was like, yeah, it was just one of those moments where you like look up with popcorn. You're like,
she's the nicest human in the face of the earth. She has the cutest child. I'm obsessed with her. You need to say hello.
All right. So I just have to ask this. What I don't understand is what you just hit upon is these boosters. The Kennedy deal, the boosters, I didn't understand. I still don't understand. It just feels like, okay, I'm going to go to this school now. Here's your check for 1.1 million. Is
But
it
it's coming through
essentially that simple?
it's coming through collectives. I mean, she'll have to do things like she'll have
What
to
does a
do.
collective mean though?
They're literally just outside entities of the university. So they're not associated with the university. That donors have created. So somebody's running it. At first, when it first started, they were nonprofits, but then Congress came down and was like, no, you're not going to get a write-off for this. Like, that's just not going to happen. So they're just outside entities that donors can put into a pot, and in exchange, a donor can say, I'm putting $50,000 down, and I would like to work with this star quarterback to do meet and greets. I'd like to have him in my office and meet, some fans, or I would like him to go do charity work for this organization with me for the day. I mean, the athlete has to do something in exchange for the money.
Yeah.
And it differs kind of depending on how much they're getting or what it looks like. But it's just it's another way that falls under NIL that's not necessarily coming straight from the brand, but it's coming from all these donors that have their own organizations and their own companies that they want an athlete to work with.
It's just a slippery slope because my mind goes to two things. One, now whoever has the most money now gets best players. And then also, do you as a lawyer have to go through like all that fine print? Because if I'm an athlete and I go, oh my God, yeah, let's take the money, let's go, and then they're like, okay, here's some organization I have to represent now that I don't believe in what they're, you know, not preaching. I'm not talking about a specific religious organization, but whatever it is, like, what if it was like, some company, then you find out they're like anti-abortion or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, do sneak attacks happen or do they?
I haven't seen it happen. I mean, obviously, if they're a donor of a university, they're usually like good people.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the ones I've worked with. I'm not going to
Okay.
put a blanket statement out there because I don't
Yeah.
know all the donors. But there's some amazing donors that are really in it for the right reasons that really just want to help however they can.
Yeah.
It cannot be associated with pay for play. So I want to say, like, it cannot be money in exchange for them pitching 100 strikeouts or, hitting 20 million home runs. Like, it can't be associated with that. It strictly has to be that they're at the school and they're getting this amount of money to do certain things. And that's put in its own contract. So then I have to review that contract also and explain to an athlete, like, hey, you're getting this chunk of money, but you need to know what you can and can't do. Because I mean, if you are working for a nonprofit, maybe another nonprofit's going to reach out and offer you money that's outside of the collective. But if it's in breach of something or complete conflict or competitive conflict with another one, you're not going to be able to do that. So you just need to be aware of like what the collective might have you do and not do, so you can figure out what other opportunities you might have presented to you and be able to
Yeah.
take.
Yeah. I don't know. That makes me like, I'm very torn on this subject because I want female athletes to play forever and get a ton of money, but the college is just, I think I'm having a hard time with change, and I may have a hard time not watching these women play for 4 years at the same college, and the money and the deals. Like, it's,
Well, at the end of the day, before collectives existed, you didn't see so much transfer portal.
yeah,
So, I don't know. You can have your own opinion on it. Like, I played and we said, yes, coach, whatever you want for a scholarship. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, if she wanted us to sign autographs, we went and signed autographs. If she wanted us to do a camp, we went and did a camp. For the sake of having a free education and like just being part of the team. And to be honest, that's changed a lot. Like, now it's kind of like, well, how much are we going to get paid for it? So,
I know.
there's
Yeah.
benefits and cons to all of it, It's like, these athletes are making money and like earning a living and kind of getting paid. But then, like, what does that look like on the other side?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. I think I'm obviously pro. I think it's just a different conversation also with female athletes and male athletes, because when they graduate, okay, your first paycheck is $1 gazillion, right?
Yeah.
But for women, oh my God, it's like you get these NIL deals, and then thank God, because your starting salary basically can barely cover, anything. And so I think that's such a hard decision on a player, you know. They always have choices, but I would think you would want to take the money, obviously, when you can get it, knowing, especially in softball, even though it's growing, you have opportunities to play here and there. And,
Yeah.
well, let's talk about that. Athletes Unlimited. Obviously, I've been just following this league. I think it's just incredible. And it seems like it's getting obviously bigger and expanding. Like, overall, do you see this? Like, I don't know. It seems like it's about to really explode. It's been heading in the right direction for so long. Do you see that going on to another level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal,
Yeah.
obviously. I mean, I know the players have wanted a traditional league because they miss playing for a team. Because if you go back and kind of look at what champ season has been, it's individual kind of accolades and point system. Um, my parents, who I have an older brother who played baseball forever, and then I played softball, they'll be like, I don't understand it. And
I
I'm like,
know.
I don't know how to explain it to you. So I think, fans, players, they want that traditional league. So they're going to a traditional league in 2025, and there'll be 4 teams. There's still some questions, like, we're waiting to hear, especially me as like an agent lawyer, on like what it looks like. But obviously all of this is good news. and it's going in the right direction, and hopefully it grows from there, and there's backing that can then in return mean more money for the girls. And hopefully like a longer season where there's more opportunities, because visibility is huge when it comes to ongoing brand deals. And if right now they're only visible for like 6 weeks of a year, you know what I mean? Like I need them out there. I need
Yeah.
them out there longer.
Do you mostly, in your world go for softball players? Are you interested in kind of repping everybody? Like, where do you see sort of the vision for you personally and Players Collective?
No, I'm interested in repping everybody. To be honest, like softball is obviously like who I am, what made me who I am today, and like I wouldn't be where I am without it. So I know it. I know the sport. I know the players involved in the sport. I know the coaches involved in the sport. So it's been an easy transition. But like I absolutely loved working with Nora, who was a gymnast, and then she introduced me to Victoria, who's currently a gymnast at Florida. What's interesting is Athletes First decided initially that they weren't going to get involved in NIL. So they told me about a pole vaulter from Alabama who is en route to almost have 1 million followers on TikTok, named Riley White, and asked if I wanted to work with her right in the beginning. And she is just the sweetest human ever and has just been killing it all through college, that she decided to take a 6th year based on COVID and like an injury just to stay and like do NIL. So she just graduated just in May of this year, and now I think she's en route to be an influencer just on her own. So it's just these other athletes and other sports are so great, and I'd love to keep expanding into other sports. I'd love to get into basketball. I'd love to get into soccer. It's just finding the right athlete and having that athlete hear about me and like want my help.
What is like the if you could rank, let's say, top three in order of sports that have the most interest for brand deals, NIL, all of it? Like,
Well,
how
to be
does that
honest, I
shake
mean,
down?
yeah, it's probably basketball. I mean, we can't take away the Caitlin Clark effect. What's interesting is that soccer at the collegiate level, I actually haven't seen as much as obviously the NWSL has garnished, with following and stuff like that. So gymnasts do really, really well. They just know how to pose and move and like do social media. Like they're just so great. Like they just kill it on social media. Track and field's been great. I mean, it really honestly depends on your social following. And I mean, it's been like, don't take away from the player that Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese were on the court, but the fact that they had a huge social media following, like those two combined are amazing. And like, we haven't seen softball get to the millions, when it comes to following. And if we can, great, because those girls will get the same kind of opportunities. Like, I obviously look at the Final Four and I'm like, what brands are like, reaching out, State Farm. And I'm like, we have the World Series coming up. Like, do you want to be involved too? But I realize there's a difference between 50 to 100,000 followers versus like 1 million followers when it comes to specific brands that want to work with an athlete.
What do you think is going to take, like in the softball world, to get, it feels like we've already had so many Caitlin Clarks of
Well,
softball.
it's interesting. I mean, obviously we don't have the following that that women's basketball's had, especially at the Final Four level. Like our numbers are growing and our numbers are better than the men's college World Series, but we're not at the level of viewership when it comes to women's basketball. And that's great because women's basketball's grown so much and now the WNBA is growing so much. Like I think we're moving in that direction, but we just haven't gotten there yet.
Do you think it's just basically like a nation, globbing on to like one or two female, softball superstars?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I
just,
mean, to be honest, like them or not like them, what OU did last year, like all eyes should have been on them, 4
yeah.
consecutive national championships, and whether or not they were going to do it. Like I have athletes that are Adidas athletes. And then to be honest, like one of my athletes at Oklahoma signed with Adidas like right before the World Series, and everyone at Adidas was all eyes on them. And by the way, OU is a Nike school, but they wanted to make sure that they had her. And when she won a national championship, the president of Adidas called her and said, congratulations.
Wow. That's
So I'm
awesome.
like, it's stuff like that where you get people to pay attention because of like what's happening in the sport. And that's amazing. So everybody needs to watch, like, and now all eyes will be on Nisha this year to see how she does. And they'll be on Jordy Ball because she's back from an injury. So they'll be on UCLA because Oklahoma graduated 9 players. So it's a whole new
Thank
team.
God. No, I was saying to a friend of mine, even though, I mean, obviously, it's one of these things where like sometimes I just thought, is this a better viewing experience for me if I pretend to cheer for Oklahoma? Because it's just been like 4 years of just like whoever they're playing, I'm cheering for the other team. But at the same time, like, I mean, they're incredible. They're all incredible. I'm not taking,
Well, and
it's
that's what I'm
just,
saying is
yeah,
like them
yeah,
or not like them.
yeah,
I mean, look, if you don't like them, you don't like them because they're winning. And at the end of
yeah.
the day, people didn't like us back in the 90s
Of
because we were
course. Once
winning.
your
We
team
just
is
didn't
your
have social
team. Yeah,
we just didn't
yeah,
have social media. But I'm
yeah.
sure like everyone hated us and we're like, cheaters, whatever, you guys always win. It's the same thing. Like you hate them because they're winning. But at the end of the day, if you met a majority of those players on the team, they're the most amazing humans I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, of course.
As a Bruin,
It's so hard to
I
say.
can say that like I was a believer in them and like following them because of just what they've done. It's amazing. It's amazing for their university. It's amazing for our sport. So I'm an advocate for our sport.
Oh, absolutely. And I have these moments where the fact that OU won 4 years in a row, I just kept saying if this was a men's team, it would be on the cover of it would be the greatest dynasty, one of the greatest dynasties. It
Yep.
truly is one of the greatest dynasties in sports. And yet, a little bit, some coverage. Obviously, now we can watch it all on ESPN, which is amazing. But like, oh, they gave the women a day off between, I don't know, 75 games. Before the finals. It just seems archaic. But that was the thing that bothered me the most. I'm like, okay, after they won 4, I was like,
They
okay,
should be on Wheaties boxes.
they
They should be on
should
Sports Illustrated. Yeah.
absolutely.
Wheaties, Sports Illustrated. They're still there.
But you're repping them. I know you rep like all of them. Um, does the stock go up after 4? I mean, or is it just kind of like
Well,
it's
yeah, I mean, there were a lot of brands that were reaching out, but right when they won. But what's interesting is like obviously it's now September and there's a whole new class coming in. So
yeah,
it's like, how do I keep those girls that were on that team that won 4 consecutive national? I mean, think about it. Like
yeah.
you went undefeated your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. Like that is crazy,
It's
crazy.
crazy.
And now I have to keep you relevant
Yeah.
with brands, with people. You know what I mean? Like
That has got to be such a difficult job because it feels like the popularity, I could be wrong, please tell me. The popularity of collegiate softballers just seems like more than the professional level.
oh
Am I
yeah.
wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. But what you need to understand is that brands are focused on the college athlete because of the viewership. The pro league doesn't have that same type of viewership. So when brands come to me now with opportunities, they're still looking at that college athlete. They're
Mm.
unfortunately not necessarily looking at the 4-time national champion that just graduated because they want someone that's on the field that people all have eyes on. So it's like, what do I do with those ones that graduated that are now pros to make sure they're still getting the opportunities that they were getting in college?
So the real push, is just growing the sport, obviously just growing the sport, but professionally in the world of softball, like taking those professional leagues and just growing that to meet the viewership and yeah, that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean, look, like her or not like her, because I know people have their feelings about Caitlin Clark. The fans she's bringing to the WNBA and the viewership she's bringing to the WNBA is unreal. Is
I don't know
unreal.
how you could not like her. She's
You know what I
I
mean? I think
mean,
she's great. I think she's great, but
she's
obviously everyone has
amazing.
their, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone has their opinions. But I mean, it's just having a player like that now they're selling out the same arenas that the men are selling out.
Oh, it's incredible. I've been watching since 97 and I first of all, I'm just going to say it. I'm just not a fan of the state of Indiana. And except for Bloomington, I love the University of Indiana. It's just basically, everybody calm down. It's basically just based on my stand-up shows. And Indianapolis, I was like, oh, is it going to be a cosmopolitan part of? No. So I've been watching more Indiana Fever games than I ever have in my entire life. I'm actively watching, and New York Liberty is my team. Sparks are number two, but I'm now watching Fever games, and I'm like, I can't believe this is happening just
Well,
because
and I
she's
bet
so fun to
you
watch.
and I bet you watched OU games last year, whether you liked them or didn't. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yes, yes, I did. And when Ball went to Nebraska, I thought, thank God. And now I'm going to be watching Nebraska. You know what I mean? It's just like you follow the players, but like, I don't
Well, you
know.
just want to see how everyone does. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you want to see the competition. Like that's what's just so great about sport
yeah.
is competition.
Yeah. Well, here's my wish for you. I want all these sports to explode, especially softball, because I love it so much. So you can only have one job. So
Thank
you
you.
can grow Players Collective and become a mega agent to the stars and spend more time on vacation. That's what I want. That's what I'd like for you.
That would be amazing. So let's just throw that out in the universe. I wouldn't even know what to do with one job. I might have some free time.
But also congratulations because I know I'm like just getting to know you as I'm talking to you, but the fact that just knowing that you wanted to be a sports agent, the path of lawyer to sports agent, and you made it happen. And specifically for women, we need 100 of you out there. It's so kick ass. It's so awesome. That's why I was so excited to talk to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really fun, and I'm super grateful for just kind of the opportunity to work with these women. They're amazing.
Lesley Feldman, everyone. Here's the moral of that story. Do what you love, and everyone keep supporting women's sports. Okay, her lighters, it's a feel-good moment of the week, and it is Asia Wilson, who just became the first player in WNBA history to score 1,000 points in a single season, hitting a fadeaway jump shot in the last 2 minutes of the game against Connecticut on Sunday. After she scored, the place erupted. Fans were going crazy. Her teammates hugging her, coaches hugging her. And then they started playing Tina Turner's Simply the Best. And I absolutely lost it. I mean, everyone, they were screaming, they were crying. The announcers lost it. And then when Wilson stepped on the court to say a thank you to the fans, she started welling up. I mean, it was so feel good. She's just incredible. She's got the MVP on ice, averaging 27 points, 12.1 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 2.7 blocks, and 1.9 steals per game. I mean, she's on fire. She's just the ultimate teammate, constantly praising the players on her team for making her success possible. And she's also an incredible role model. She said, I really have to credit my off-season work and my preparation. I take time to get away from basketball, to let me miss it. So then when I'm in it, I don't take it for granted. My screensaver is rest at the end, not in the middle. And that's something I tell myself every single day. I've got work to do. That's going to be my mindset until I'm done playing, until I've squeezed everything out of the game. Asia Wilson, she really is simply the best. And that's our show. Please leave a review, a 5-star rating. It really helps. And check out all the tour information on herlights.com. Fans, friends, family, have the best week of your life.